Welcome, travelers of time and myth, to Forgotten Scrolls. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the daily routine, by the constant noise of the modern world? This story is for you, who yearn for calm, purpose, and a connection with ancient values. Tonight, I will take you on a gentle yet powerful journey so you can sleep, inspired by the echoes of a noble era. Prepare to immerse yourself in the path of the samurai. In this story, we will traverse the birth of Japan's most emblematic warrior caste, the paths of honor, the katana, legendary battles, and the wise men who guided their spirit. We will discover the balance between body, mind, and soul that the samurai tirelessly sought, and we will also see how their legacy still breathes among us, even if their footsteps have vanished into the mists of time. All narrated calmly so your mind can relax as you learn. You will sleep with stories of steel and wisdom, with silent battles fought in the heart before the field. You will know anonymous heroes, invisible strategies, decisions made on the edge of duty and compassion. You will witness the splendor of the shogunates, the poetry of Bushido, and the inevitable fall of this golden age. We invite you to walk barefoot through the bamboo temples of memory. This video is made for you who can't disconnect, who need inspiration to find order in chaos, for you who seek discipline, inner peace, and true purpose. Here, every word is a leaf gently falling into your consciousness. I promise you a journey full of meaning, without haste, without noise. Just you, the samurai, and the rest you deserve. So close your eyes, breathe deeply, and allow these ancient stories to accompany you into the world of dreams. Because sometimes, to reconnect with ourselves, we must listen to the voices of the past. Stay until the end, and you will discover secrets few know about these guardians of honor. It's time to travel. It's time to remember. Chapter 1. The Birth of a Warrior Caste. Many centuries ago, when Japan was still an archipelago divided by clans and sacred mountains, a figure was born who would change its destiny forever. The samurai was not merely a warrior, he was the guardian of an ideal. Their story began amidst territorial conflicts and the need to protect lands. Nobles required loyal soldiers, and thus the first Bushi emerged. They were men of arms, but also of spirit. The early samurai did not wear shining armor or curved katanas. They used bows and straight swords, and their role was tied to the service of the powerful. Their loyalty was not yet a code, but a necessity for survival. They lived in villages and were called to war by their lords, but over time their function grew and became part of the Japanese soul. From soldiers, they transitioned to symbols. During the 6th to 10th centuries, internal wars shaped their identity. Japan lacked unity, and clans fought for control and prestige. In this chaotic environment, the samurai learned to live between life and death. Every battle was a school, every wound, a lesson in honor. Thus, not only their swords but their hearts were tempered. As the emperor's power waned, the clans gained strength. The most influential families formed private armies, and the samurai were their core. Legendary figures emerged, masters of strategy and combat. The names of Minamoto and Taira began to be written in history with blood. And the samurai were no longer mere soldiers, they were a caste. This transformation was slow, like a river carving rock. The samurai began to train from childhood, learning not only to fight but also to think. Calligraphy, poetry, and meditation mingled with the sword and bow. It was not enough to be strong, one had to be wise. The balance between mind and body was essential for their path. Thus was born an ideal that would distinguish them for centuries, that of living in service. They fought not for glory, but for duty. Their identity was forged in sacrifice and obedience. Death was not a tragic end, but a dignified possibility if it was for their lord. This concept would become the cornerstone of their existence. The samurai was no longer just a man, he was a symbol. With the passage of centuries, Their role consolidated in social structures. They stood just below the nobility, but far above the common people. They had land, servants, and a position of respect. But that position came with strict duties. Their lives were guarded by honor, as if they lived under the eye of heaven. Error was paid with life. From the beginning, the samurai's nature was contradictory. They were capable of acts of compassion and beauty, but also of relentless violence. This duality always accompanied them. Their code was not yet written, but it was already sensed in their actions. They were bridges between chaos and order, between earth and the sacred. This chapter of their birth is essential to understanding everything that came after. They were not born with the code in hand, but forged it with every decision, every act of bravery, and every renunciation. Their figure grew in legends, in tales told under the moon, and what began as a practical function became mystical. Now that you know their origins, the journey has just begun. Prepare to discover the soul of these men through their values, because what truly made a samurai was not his sword, but what lay behind it. Chapter 2. The Code of Honor. Bushido. Bushido was more than a code of conduct. It was the very soul of the samurai. It wasn't etched in stone from the beginning, but woven over time through centuries of tradition and experience. It means the way of the warrior and dictated every decision, word, and thought. It was invisible, yet governed their lives like a sacred law. To live without it was like wandering aimlessly in the fog. The pillars of Bushido were 7, each reflecting an essential value: rectitude, courage, benevolence, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. These were not simple words, but daily practices demanded even in the smallest details. From how a samurai saluted to how he faced death, his life was a constant alignment with these principles. Rectitude was the heart of Bushido. It meant always acting with justice, even when no one was watching. There was no room for moral ambiguity or excuses. The samurai had to be the pillar that upheld truth in a changing world. Their judgment was trained from youth, never to deviate from duty. Courage was not just bravery in combat, but acting despite fear. To be brave was also to face oneself, doubt, pride. The samurai learned that living with courage meant accepting constant risk because their life could end at any moment, and they had to be prepared. Every action was an opportunity to demonstrate it. Benevolence showed that strength had to be guided by compassion. Although they could destroy with a sword, they also knew when to sheath it. Power without kindness was weakness in disguise. A wise samurai protected the weak and helped the people. Thus, they built respect beyond fear. Respect arose from humility. The samurai recognized that every person, even an enemy, deserved dignity. Their manners were refined and their words measured. A harsh gesture could be more offensive than a blow. In Bushido, respecting others was a way of respecting oneself. Honesty was a constant demand. There was no room for lies or deceit on their path. Their word held more value than any contract. A samurai who broke a promise was marked forever. Truth was their invisible shield before the world. Honor was the light that guided them in darkness. Losing it was worse than death. That's why many samurai preferred seppuku, ritual suicide, rather than living dishonored. It was an extreme act, but it showed the depth of their commitment. Honor was not claimed, it was earned. Loyalty completed the circle of Bushido. It was absolute devotion to their lord, their clan, their cause. It wasn't just about obeying, but about trusting, without reservation. Even if the order led to death, it was fulfilled without hesitation. Fidelity was the indivisible soul of the samurai. Bushido was not a prison, but a profound freedom, that of knowing who you are. In a chaotic world, it gave them clarity, direction, and purpose. It taught them to die well, but above all, to live meaningfully. Chapter 3. The Sword of the Soul. The Katana. The katana was not merely a tool for combat, It was the extension of the samurai's soul, his most faithful companion. Forged with patience and art, each sword carried a story. From the choice of metal to the final polish, everything was ceremony. It was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of identity. The blacksmiths who created these swords were considered sacred artists. For days, they worked in silence, folding the steel up to 1,000 times. Each layer added strength and flexibility, as if the warrior's soul integrated into the metal. Flames, hammering, and water made the process a ritual. Nothing was left to chance. The result was a curved blade, elegant and deadly. Its edge could cut with precision, and its shape balanced strength with speed. The katana was light, yet its power was immense in trained hands. It was faster than other weapons, and its design allowed for fluid movements. One did not just wield it, one danced with it. Samurai cared for their katanas as if they were their own children. They cleaned them daily, stored them with respect, and never used them, without reason. Drawing a katana meant accepting consequences. It was not a trivial act, but a profound decision. The warrior had to be ready for whatever came. The bond between samurai and sword was spiritual. Some even gave them names, as if they were living companions. Before each battle, many prayed while holding it, seeking concentration. They believed the sword absorbed part of their vital energy. They did not fight alone, they fought with it. The katana was not the only sword, but it was the most sacred. Others existed, like the shorter wakizashi, used in confined spaces or for seppuku. Both were carried together in the daisho as a sign of samurai status. But it was the katana that became legend. Its shape, its sound when drawn, its history. In combat, the art of katana handling was a precise dance. Every movement had to be measured, like a poem written with steel. The cut had to be clean, direct, without wasted energy. The technique sought not just to win, but to do so with beauty. It was a form of art amidst chaos. To master the katana required years of practice. Dojos were spaces of silence and discipline. Day after day, the samurai repeated the same movements, not out of habit, but for perfection. Their body had to remember what the mind might forget in the heat of battle. But the sword not only taught how to fight, it also taught how to live. Through it, the samurai learned patience, focus, and respect. It was a mirror of their soul. If they were calm, the katana flowed. If there was anger or doubt, the sword trembled. Thus, the warrior's truth was revealed. Now that you know the sacred relationship between the samurai and his katana, it's time to delve into their formation. Chapter 4. Great Battles and Legends. The history of the samurai is marked by epic confrontations. Each battle was a page written with courage, blood, and strategy. They were more than clashes of swords. They were duels of honor and destiny. Many defined the course of feudal Japan for generations, and from each arose legends that are still whispered today. One of the most famous was the Battle of Dan no Ura in 1185. In it, the Taira and Minamoto clans clashed in a decisive naval combat. The waves turned red as arrows soared through the sky. The Minamoto clan triumphed, marking the beginning of the shogunate. It was the birth of a new order ruled by warriors. Another key conflict was the Hogan Rebellion in 1156, which, though brief, revealed the tension between imperial and military power. The samurai did not yet dominate the country, but were already proving essential. This battle sowed the seeds of future major conflicts. It was the prelude to an era of internal wars. The Battle of Sekigahara in 1600 changed the destiny of Japan. More than 160,000 warriors participated in this colossal confrontation. Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious, unifying the country under his command. Thus was born the Tokugawa shogunate, which would last more than 2 centuries. It was a war that ended many others. The Onin Wars, 1467-1477, were a prolonged disaster. Japan plunged into chaos with clans fighting for control and power. Cities burned, alliances fractured, and the nobility fragmented. This marked the beginning of the Sengoku period, the era of warring states. Each region became a battlefield. In this turbulent era, figures like Oda Nobunaga shone. With his military genius, he revolutionized combat in Japan. He was among the first to strategically use firearms. His ambition was to unify the country at any cost. Though betrayed, his legacy inspired subsequent leaders. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, his successor, continued that mission. From humble origins, he rose to dominate almost all of Japan. His military campaigns were skillful and effective. He knew how to combine force with diplomacy, leaving a mark on history. His name still resonates among the most admired samurai feats. Each battle left behind heroes and martyrs, warriors who faced entire armies who fought without surrender, stories of loyalty unto death, of sacrifices for honor. Their names, sometimes forgotten, live on in poems and songs. Because in the heart of the samurai, legend never dies. The chroniclers of the time recorded many of these exploits, but others survived only in the voice of the people, passed down from generation to generation. Some mingled with fantasy, others remain as pure facts. All share a common soul, that of the warrior who does not fear falling. Thus, myth is forged. Chapter 5. Samurai and Shogunates. To understand the samurai, we must comprehend the world that surrounded them. The shogunates were military governments led by a shogun, the most powerful of the warriors. Although the emperor remained a sacred figure, true power lay in the hands of the shogun. Thus was born a delicate balance between the symbolic and the practical. The samurai were the shogun's arms, his executive force. The first shogunate was that of Kamakura, founded by Minamoto no Yoritomo. After the Genpei War, Yoritomo obtained the title of shogun in 1192. This military government marked a break with traditional imperial power. The samurai became the ruling class, replacing the aristocracy. Feudal Japan took shape under their armed vigilance. During this period, the figure of the samurai consolidated. They were no longer mere soldiers, but local governors, administrators, and judges. They were granted lands in exchange for loyalty, forming a network of vassalage. Each lord had his sworn warriors, creating a pyramidal structure. The shogun's word was law, and the samurai's duty was to obey it without question. Then came the Ashikaga shogunate in 1338. Although it started strongly, its control was weak and brief. The power of the feudal lords, daimyo, grew enormously. Thus began the Sengoku period, where each region fought for its independence. The samurai transitioned from protecting order to disputing it. The swords that defended the throne now challenged it. For centuries, samurai served multiple masters. Their loyalty was not to a throne, but to their lord. This generated constant conflicts between rival clans. Alliances shifted with the wind, and betrayals were part of the game. Even so, the code of honor continued to guide their decisions. Duty and obedience were unshakable pillars. With the arrival of the Tokugawa shogunate in 1603, peace was established. Tokugawa Ieyasu centralized power and regulated samurai activity. Warriors no longer waged war but continued to be guardians of order. They became armed bureaucrats, guardians of balance. Despite the calm, their spirit remained trained and alert. The caste system hardened under Tokugawa. The samurai were at the top, but their privileges came with duties. They could not work in other professions or marry outside their class. Their lives were controlled, measured, almost ceremonial. They lived to serve, to be ready if the sword called them, although many would never see battle. This stability lasted more than 200 years, but in the hearts of many samurai, the desire for action burned. Martial arts were perfected as a form of discipline. The philosophy of Bushido became more introspective. Being a samurai was no longer just fighting. It was a way of existence, a balance between tradition and evolution. The relationship between samurai and shogunates was always one of mutual dependence. Without the shogun, there was no order. Without samurai, there was no strength. But this symbiosis had an expiration date. The world would change, and with it, the need for warriors. The silence preceding change was already palpable in the air. Now that you understand the political framework of the shogunates, it's time to explore the tactical soul of the samurai. Chapter 6. The Art of Strategy. A samurai was not just brute force, but also a sharp mind. Strategy was a vital part of their training, almost a second sword. They learned to read the terrain, the enemy, the exact moment to attack or retreat. Their gaze went beyond the battlefield. It encompassed politics, diplomacy, and psychology. Because a true warrior wins before drawing his blade. The most influential book was Sun Tzu's The Art of War, even though it was Chinese. Its principles crossed borders and adapted to Japanese philosophy. Observe without being seen, move without leaving a trace, win without fighting. These were teachings etched into the mind of the samurai strategist. Winning, with minimal losses, was a sign of wisdom, not cowardice. They also studied Heiho, the way of combat. Miyamoto Musashi, a famous swordsman, wrote the Book of Five Rings. In it, he spoke of strategy as a dance with death and life. Every strike had to have intent, every movement, purpose. For Musashi, the mind had to be like water, adapting without losing its essence. The samurai trained in dojos, where tactics were as important as technique. They learned to anticipate the opponent with a simple gesture. Balance, posture, and breathing were part of the art of combat. A good strategist knew how to defeat the enemy without shedding blood. Mental victory was always the noblest. In wars, samurai commanders studied maps and climates. They used messengers, deceptions, formations, surprise, and traps. There was no improvisation. Every detail was considered. Knowledge of the terrain could make a smaller army invincible. It was a silent dance between logic and intuition. The best known formations were Gyoran and Joan. The former mimicked the movement of fish, fluid and adaptable. The latter formed a defensive circle with the leader at the center. These techniques showed how each battle was a chessboard. The sword was only the last move, not the first. And the mind was always the queen of combat. Many samurai practiced meditation before a battle. Thus, they cleared their minds of fear and emotion. A clear mind decides better, acts with precision, and is not easily deceived. Strategy begins within, in mastering oneself. Only then can one aspire to defeat another. Even in peacetime, the samurai continued to train their minds. They participated in games like Go and Shogi, which demanded foresight and control. They also studied history, poetry, and calligraphy, refining their perception. Every detail could become an advantage in the real field. Knowledge was often the sharpest sword. The samurai understood that strategy was an art form. It wasn't enough to have strength. One had to know when and how to use it. Patience was a virtue, calculation a tool. Even in defeat, strategy could save honor or prepare for future victory. It was an endless path where one could always improve. And now that you have discovered the samurai mind, we will delve into their spirit. Chapter 7. The Balanced Soul. Spirituality and Discipline. The life of the samurai was not limited to battle or strategy. Their strength also came from inner balance. For them, the spirit had to be as trained as the body and mind. Spirituality and discipline formed an inseparable bond that guided their daily actions. This balance was the foundation for facing any challenge without losing composure. Zen Buddhism profoundly influenced samurai life. Through meditation and contemplation, they learned to control their emotions and accept impermanence. Zen practice taught them to live in the present without fear or attachment. Thus, the warrior found peace even amidst chaos. This inner calm was their greatest ally in battle. Furthermore, the constant practice of martial arts was a form of meditation in motion. Every gesture, every breath had to be conscious and precise. Rigid discipline taught them to overcome pain and fatigue. Perseverance not only strengthened the body, but also the character. Being a samurai was a commitment to continuous improvement, without rest or excuses. Samurai also cultivated other arts such as poetry and calligraphy. These artistic expressions were exercises to temper the soul. Through them, they explored sensitivity and beauty, qualities that balance the harshness of war. This duality allowed them to understand the complexity of existence between life and death. Bushido, the code of honor, was not just a list of external rules, but a guide for spiritual growth. Values such as rectitude, respect, courage, and loyalty were linked to the purity of the soul. Honesty with oneself and with others was fundamental. A samurai had to always act with integrity, even when no one was looking. Death was also accepted as a natural part of life. This understanding allowed them to face danger without fear. To die with honor was preferable to living without it. Awareness of finitude gave value to every moment. This attitude strengthened their discipline and helped them maintain serenity in adversity. The practice of self-awareness was constant. They reflected on their actions and emotions to avoid pride or anger. Humility was essential for growth and learning. Recognizing one's own limitations was not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. The samurai always sought harmony, both within and outside themselves. Their relationship with nature also formed part of their spirituality. In forests, mountains, and rivers, they found inspiration and calm. Nature was seen as a teacher and a mirror of the soul. They learned to respect it and to live in consonance with its rhythms. This bond reinforced their sense of belonging and balance. Finally, discipline was not only physical or mental, but also moral. The samurai life was a constant exercise of control, respect, and dedication. Their trained soul made the impossible possible. Without this balance, neither the best sword nor the finest strategy would have been enough to form a true warrior. Chapter 8: The Fall of the Samurai. The history of the samurai is not only one of glory and honor, but also of an inevitable fall. With the arrival of the Meiji era in the 19th century, Japan began a process of modernization and westernization that radically changed its social and political structure. The power of the samurai began to weaken in the face of a strong central government and new forms of military. The era of the warriors was coming to an end. The end of the Tokugawa shogunate marked the beginning of this transformation. For over 2 centuries, the samurai had been the ruling class, guardians of order and law. However, with the Meiji Restoration, the feudal system was abolished. Samurai privileges disappeared, and their social status was reduced. Many faced the loss of their purpose and honor in a world that no longer needed them. Western weaponry and military modernization rendered traditional samurai techniques obsolete. The use of firearms and armies organized under a centralized command replaced the old tactics. This transformation also meant the end of duels and the practice of the katana as the primary weapon. The samurai had to adapt or disappear. Many chose to resist. Others resigned themselves. Some samurai led rebellions against the new order, such as the Satsuma Rebellion. However, these were quickly suppressed by the modern imperial army. The resistance was brave but futile against a country seeking to integrate into the contemporary world. The symbolic and real fall of the samurai was a moment of sadness and reflection for Japanese society. The change affected not only the warrior class, but also the culture. Samurai values were questioned and relegated. However, many of these principles remained alive in Japanese society, adapted to the new times. Bushido became an inspiration for work ethic and civic honor. The samurai essence persisted, though transformed. Some former samurai sought new ways of life, becoming educators, civil servants, or entrepreneurs. This transition was neither easy nor quick. Nostalgia for the past era and cultural clash created tensions. Despite everything, their legacy began to be valued differently as part of a national identity that was still seeking to define itself. The samurai did not completely disappear. In popular culture, literature, and cinema, they became a romantic and heroic symbol. Their history became a reference for discipline, bravery, and honor. This revaluation allowed the samurai spirit to live on in the collective memory of Japan and the world. The fall of the samurai also invites reflection on the inevitable change in life and history. Nothing remains the same, and every era has its end. The dignity with which one faces the end can define the legacy we leave. In that sense, the samurai taught us to accept impermanence with honor and courage. This dark chapter is also a doorway to the present. Chapter 9. The Echo of the Samurai in the Present. Although the era of the samurai ended more than a century ago, their legacy still resonates strongly in contemporary Japanese culture. Their values and teachings have not been lost, but have transformed and adapted to modern times. Today, the discipline, honor, and dedication that characterize these warriors continue to inspire many in different aspects of daily life. In Japan, Bushido continues to be an important influence on work ethics and social relationships. Mutual respect, loyalty, and responsibility are values reflected in people's behavior and in how institutions are managed. The figure of the samurai symbolizes an ideal of conduct that many aspire to follow. Furthermore, popular culture keeps the samurai spirit alive through cinema, literature, manga, and anime. Films and series narrate stories of bravery and sacrifice that fascinate both Japanese and people worldwide. These narratives not only entertain, but also transmit the philosophy and lifestyle of the ancient warriors. The art of Japanese swordsmanship, kendo, is another channel through which the samurai tradition is kept alive. This modern discipline combines physical practice with spiritual and mental development. Practitioners seek not only technique but also inner harmony, following the principles that guided the samurai centuries ago. Respect for history is also manifested in the preservation of temples, castles, and museums dedicated to this era. These places are not only tourist attractions, but centers where samurai history is studied and celebrated. Thus, new generations can connect with their roots and understand the depth of this legacy. In contemporary Japanese philosophy, the idea of balance between mind, body, and spirit remains relevant. Many samurai values are integrated into practices like Zen and other forms of meditation that help maintain serenity in today's fast-paced life. This pursuit of balance is a direct inheritance from the ancient warriors. The samurai also inspired artistic and cultural movements that value dedication and effort. Perfection in work, the constant pursuit of improvement, and humility are principles that resonate in different professional and creative fields. Thus, samurai influence transcends the military and expands into civilian life. In Japan, respect for tradition coexists with modernity. This constant dialogue allows samurai values to remain relevant, even in a globalized world. The samurai, far from being just a historical figure, is a living symbol that continues to guide attitudes and behaviors. The story of the samurai reminds us that the past is not separate from the present, but is a river that flows towards us with valuable lessons. In every act of discipline and honor, the shadow of the ancient warrior remains. Chapter 10. Famous samurai who made history. Throughout Japanese history, several samurai have left an indelible mark, not only for their combat skills but also for their political and cultural influence. These warriors exemplify the spirit of Bushido and have become symbols of bravery, honor, and leadership that transcend eras. Learning their stories brings us closer to the essence of this fascinating past. One of the most well-known is Miyamoto Musashi, considered the greatest swordsman in Japan. His life was marked by legendary duels and the constant pursuit of perfection in swordsmanship and strategy. Musashi was also a philosopher and author of the Book of Five Rings, a work that still inspires strategists and leaders worldwide. Another emblematic samurai is Oda Nobunaga, a military and political leader who initiated the process of unifying Japan during the 16th century. Known for his audacity and innovative vision, Nobunaga broke traditions to consolidate his power, using advanced military tactics and promoting trade and culture. His legacy paved the way for the era of the shogunates. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Nobunaga's successor, was another key figure who came from humble origins. He rose to become one of the most powerful men in Japan. Hideyoshi completed the unification of the country and promoted reforms that influenced Japanese society for generations. His story is an example of determination and cunning. Tokugawa Ieyasu was the founder of the Tokugawa shogunate, which governed Japan for over 250 years. His political and strategic skill allowed him to establish a stable government that brought peace and prosperity after centuries of civil wars. Ieyasu represents the ideal of the samurai not only as a warrior, but also as a wise ruler. In the realm of loyalty and sacrifice, the group known as the 47 Ronin is legendary. These masterless samurai avenged the unjust death of their daimyo, showing absolute commitment to honor and justice. Their story has been told in multiple formats and is an enduring symbol of Bushido in Japanese culture. Other notable samurai like Date Masamune, known for his charisma and leadership, and Hattori Hanzo, a ninja master and strategist, also contributed to shaping Japan's history. Each left a particular legacy that enriches the mosaic of this fascinating era. These figures not only excelled on the battlefield, but also influenced Japanese culture, politics, and philosophy. Their lives and actions continue to be studied and admired, revealing the depth and complexity of the samurai beyond the warrior. The fame of these samurai also reaches the present through literature, cinema, and art. Their stories inspire new generations to value the principles of honor, bravery, and loyalty. They are a bridge between the past and the present that keeps the essence of Bushido alive. By remembering these warriors, we understand that the samurai was not a single man, but a caste of individuals who marked history with their virtues and challenges. Chapter 11. Curiosities of the Samurai World. The samurai world is full of fascinating details that often escape those who only know its superficial image. For example, did you know that samurai carried two swords, the katana and the wakizashi, as a symbol of their status? This combination was called daisho and represented their rank and commitment to the code of honor. Furthermore, the color and ornamentation of armor varied greatly depending on the era and region, reflecting not only practical function, but also the identity and prestige of each warrior. Some armor was so elaborate that it became true works of art, designed to intimidate enemies and protect the spirit. A samurai's daily life was not just combat and training. They also dedicated time to learning calligraphy, poetry, and philosophy. This balance between strength and culture shows that the ideal warrior was not just a fighter, but a complete man with mind, body, and soul in harmony. Another curiosity is that ritual suicide, or seppuku, was considered an honorable act to avoid dishonor or restore it after a defeat. This extreme act reveals the profound importance that honor and personal responsibility held for the samurai, values that governed every aspect of their existence. Many samurai were also patrons of the arts and architects of impressive castles. These castles served not only as fortresses, but also as cultural and administrative centers, consolidating the power of clans in Japan. Although popular image portrays them as tough and austere men, some samurai had a more human and everyday side. For example, they enjoyed traditional music, festivals, and family companionship, demonstrating that behind the armor were emotions and living traditions. Samurai also had their own legal and military system with strict rules for recruitment, training, and behavior. This rigorous order allowed them to remain an elite for centuries, influencing Japanese social structure even after their fall. Another interesting fact is that the samurai legacy has influenced modern popular culture worldwide, from movies and video games to business philosophy. Bushido continues to be a source of inspiration for those seeking discipline and values in daily life. Finally, although the samurai system as such officially disappeared in the 19th century, their spirit and teachings are still present in Japanese culture and in global admiration. This heritage invites us to reflect on the power of tradition and honor in a rapidly changing world. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the forgotten scrolls of samurai Japan. If this story has inspired and moved you, don't forget to share it and continue exploring the wonders of our past. Your adventure has just begun. Chapter 12. Women. Samurai, the Onabu Geisha. For centuries, women also wielded weapons in feudal Japan. They were known as Onabu Geisha, noble female warriors who protected their homes when men went to war. They were not symbolic figures, but combatants trained in martial arts. Their preferred weapon was the naginata, a versatile and feared curved spear. They often led the defense of castles and villages. One of the most celebrated was Tomoe Gozen, a woman of great beauty and even greater courage. She served under Minamoto no Yoshinaka during the Genpei Wars. In battle, she rode like lightning, striking down enemies with deadly skill. Her name was etched into the scrolls of samurai history. She was an example of unparalleled courage. The Onabu Geisha were not an isolated rarity, but part of a well-established tradition. In peacetime, many were educated in literature and etiquette, but in the face of threat, their hands became extensions of justice and protection. These women were the soul of their homes and their clans. In them, honor also flourished with steel. Although their stories were less recorded than those of men, their legacy has not been lost. In castles like Himeji, legends are told of women who defended walls with cunning and strength. Their exploits are recounted in traditional songs and kabuki theater. They were feared and respected by enemies and allies. Their determination was unwavering. The training of an Onabu Geisha was no easier or lighter. They were taught strategy, endurance, and mental discipline. Many were also experts in the use of the tanto, short dagger. Some preferred the bow and arrows, as in prolonged sieges. They were, in every sense, complete warriors. In many samurai families, mothers taught their daughters the art of combat. It was part of home education, alongside calligraphy and tea ceremony. Thus, generations of women were formed, prepared for the unexpected. In a world of uncertainty, feminine resolve was vital. The sword could be in the hands of anyone with honor. Despite their bravery, the Onabu Geisha faced centuries of oblivion. History was mostly written by men, focusing attention on male figures. But the voice of these women was not silenced forever. Today, their memory returns with force in books, museums, and films. They are icons of ancestral courage. The image of the woman samurai has been reclaimed by modern art. Paintings, graphic novels, and anime portray the Onabu Geisha with respect. Their figure inspires new generations of women to fight for their place. They represent the balance between strength and compassion. Their example transcends time. In the spirit of these warriors, we see that courage has no gender. The history of the samurai is incomplete without them. They were mothers, daughters, strategists, and leaders. In their eyes burned the same fire as in any man of war. Their legacy lives in the blood of Japanese tradition, just like the warriors who rode under the banner of the rising sun. The Onabu Geisha deserve to be remembered. Honoring them is also understanding the breadth of the samurai soul. In the silence of the nights, their names whisper in legends. Listening to them is to believe again in the power of spirit and the equality of honor. Chapter 13. The Ritual of Seppuku and its Meaning. Seppuku, also known as harakiri, is one of the most impactful rituals in samurai culture. It was not simply a way of dying, but an act of profound honor. It was a way to atone for mistakes, avoid humiliation, or protest with dignity. The warrior chose to face death with serenity. It was the ultimate act of control over one's destiny. The ritual began with careful preparation. The samurai bathed, dressed in a white tunic, and wrote a farewell poem. Then he sat on a tatami mat in seiza position, calmly and with dignity. Before him, the tanto or wakizashi was placed. Everything was performed with solemnity and respect. A second, known as the kaishakunin, accompanied him in the act. His task was to decapitate the samurai at the right moment to prevent prolonged suffering.
This person was chosen with absolute trust. The coordination between them had to be perfect. It was an act of mutual loyalty. The abdominal cut symbolized the tearing of the soul. The warrior opened his belly from left to right, showing his bravery. Physical pain was part of the sacrifice. Not to cry out or show fear was essential. It was the ultimate expression of inner mastery. This ritual had variations. Sometimes the samurai only feigned the cut, and the second immediately
performed the decapitation. On other occasions, the warrior carried out the entire process alone. The versions changed according to the era and clan, but the profound meaning remained intact. Not everyone could perform seppuku. It was a privilege reserved for the samurai class. Commoners were executed without this ceremony. That's why seppuku also represented status. It was a way to die with honor, not as a common criminal. Even in death, the samurai affirmed their identity. The farewell poem was an essential part of the ritual. In a few lines, the samurai expressed his vision of life, duty, and the afterlife. It was a final reflection laden with beauty and serenity. These poems have been preserved as testaments to the warrior spirit. In them, one feels the peace of one who no longer fears. During the Edo period, seppuku was also used as an official punishment. It was ordered by the shogun as an honorable form of execution. Some performed it as a protest against unjust decisions. Thus, seppuku transcended the personal. It became a political act, silent but eloquent. Although seppuku has disappeared today, its echo still resonates in Japanese culture. It reflects the intensity of commitment to one's own values. It is not about glorifying death, but about understanding the importance of honor. In a changing world, these principles still inspire us, reminding us of the power of integrity. Seppuku was not just a way of dying, but a way of living until the very end with coherence. The samurai, even in their departure, taught something profound. Their death spoke of courage, discipline, and responsibility. In that silent farewell lies an eternal lesson, that of a soul that does not surrender, even in its last breath.